Hi, this is a video for 3.2 practice A, and I put at the top there of this paper the little really important information that you'll need. And we're talking about imaginary numbers, and an imaginary number is a square root of a negative number. You can't square a number and come up with a negative because if you square a negative, it's going to be a positive, or if you square a positive, it's going to be a positive. So, really, technically, square root of -1 doesn't really exist. It's an imaginary number. And so you can call the square root of -1 I, and you can call it, and then if you were to square both sides, the square and the square root would cancel out. You would just have -1 equals I squared. So I'm going to take those away. I just wanted to show you how we get that. -1 equals I squared. So this also works. So you'll need both of those today. Okay, so let's zoom out and get to the work. Okay, so what you need to do is copy all of this onto your own paper or print this worksheet and use it to write it on if you want to. It's up to you. You can print or copy, but you need to take a picture of your work and then turn that in on Google Classroom. Okay, so let's keep in mind the top, just so we know what the top is. And let's look at number one. Number one, we could change it to radical 25 times radical -1. If we do that, now the 5 can come out of the square root because it's not a negative anymore. And that negative radical -1 can come out as an I. So that would be 5I. Radical -81, you can do the same thing. It would be radical 81 times radical -1. Because you could always multiply those two together and put them under one radical. But then 81 comes out as a 9, and the -1 comes out as an I, so 9I. Number 3 breaks down into a little smaller pieces. 16 times 2 would be 32. You could also use 4 times 8, but 8, you can then take another 4 out. So it'd be better to use 16 because it's a bigger square root. So 16 times 2 times -1, this comes out as the 4. And this comes out as the I, but the radical 2 cannot come out, so it stays in. So that was 3, 4 through 7. They're just asking you to make two sides equal. So this one needs a 15. So this one we're going to have to do 5 times 3. So x is going to have to be 3. And then this one needs a 3i, so y is going to have to be I right there. Or y is going to also have to be 3 because we need 3i. 6, I'll just do number 5. You needed a 12, so we need 6 times -6 times -2 because negative times negative is positive. You need a 10i, so it's going to have to be 5 right there. 5 times 2 is 10, then times I. Number 6, you need a 13, so this x has to be 13. There's no other way around it. It has to be a 13 in there. And then 2 times 4 is your 8. So you had to put them both on the same side on number 6. Number 7, 3 times 6 is your 18. You need to get 18, so 3 times 6. And then 5 times 10 gives you the 50. So y would have to be 10. So I was just plugging in those numbers, not a whole lot on those. Numbers 8, 9, 10, 11 are combining like terms. We'll call it CLT, combining like terms. Okay, so like terms are just like they are when you do x's and y's. You've got to have the same variable or the same term. So number 8, you can see 3 and 5 were both numbers, so that equals 8. And then 2i and 7i together connected them because they're both i's, and that's 9i. So you had 2 plus 7, you have the 9, and then they're i's. Number 9, 4 and 9 are both positive, so add them together, you get 13. -3i and +2i. This is a -3i right there and a +2i. So you got to subtract those. You're going to get a 1, and it's got to be negative because there's more negatives than there are positives. So negative I. Number 10, you have to distribute the negative sign. You've got to do negative 4, and negative times negative positive is negative 3i. Now you can combine 6 and negative 4 together. You have to subtract. That's how I got the 2. And then 5i minus 3i. So you had positive 5i's, you got minus 3i's. So again, subtracting those gives you 2i's. And then number 7, you again have to distribute the negative. Negative times 10 would be negative 10. Negative times negative 3 would be positive 3. Negative times a negative is positive. So positive 7 with a negative 10 gives you that negative 3. You got to subtract, and there's more negatives. Negative 4i and positive 3i. Again, you have to subtract, and there's more negatives, negative 4 of them. So subtracting them gives you 1. So negative 1i. That's 11. Number 12, A and B, I just changed them all to i's and combined like terms. So negative, I get 5i, I got minus, and then that's 3i, and then plus, and then that's 9i. So 2i, when you combine the first two, you get 2i. And then plus 9 more i's gives you the 11i. So that first one is 11i. Letter B, you have that negative 27, which could actually be broken down into 9 and times 3 times the negative 1. So the 9 is going to come out as a 3, and the negative 1 is going to come out as an I. And then radical 3 doesn't come out, so you just leave it. Negative 49 is just 7i, because square root of 49 is 7, and then negative makes it an I. Minus negative 64 is just 8i, because 64 square root is 8, and negative 1 is I. So the only two we can combine are these two right here. You cannot combine the first one because it has a radical 3 next to it. The other ones don't. So that would be B. 13. You have to distribute. Okay, so you're just going to multiply. I got to do this because you got to be able to see it. Okay, there you go. So you have to multiply the 5i times both terms. So 5i times 4 is negative 20. So that goes right to the middle over here. Okay, so this problem's coming here. And negative 20i, because it's 5i times negative 4, so negative 20i. 5i times 2i would be 10i squared, because I times I is I squared. Now remember the very top of our paper, we had said that I squared was negative 1. Right there, we said I squared was negative 1. So when we're down here on number 13, there's an I squared in there, 10i squared. So we're going to take that I squared out, and we're going to put in a negative 1 in its place. So we get negative 20i comes down. You can't do anything with that, but 10 times negative 1 would just be negative 10. So I'm going to put that in the front. Okay, so that's up here in the front. And then negative 20i, we're going to put in the back. Okay, so that would be 13. 14, you have the 3i times the 8, which is the 24i right there. And then 3i times negative 3i would be negative 9i squared. Again, you have the I squared. So again, you need to put that as a negative 1. Negative 9 times negative 1 is actually positive 9. And then bring down your 24i. So that would be 14. 15 is over on the side, the left side there. 2 times 3 is 6. Now this is what we call FOIL. I'm going to write that up here above here. Now FOIL means your first terms. So I did the 2 times the 3 because they're both the firsts. O is for outside terms. So 2 and I are both outside. So I did 2i right there. And I is for inside terms. Okay, so it's negative I times 3. So it's negative 3i. Notice I put them on top of each other because they're like terms, because I can combine them. And then L stands for the two last terms. Negative I times positive I is negative I squared. But you remember negative I or I squared comes out as a negative 1, but when you bring down the negative and you have a negative 1, that's going to be double negative. It's going to be positive. So you bring down your 6. That becomes this becomes a negative I. So let me fix that. So this is negative I because there's more negatives than there are positives. So 6 and 1 is 7, but it's going to be 7 minus I, not plus I. There you go. Number 16, you did the same thing, FOIL. So you got 4 times 9. Those are the two first terms. And that would be 36 right there. And then the outside terms would be negative 8i, because 4 and 2 is 8, and then I there in the negative. Inside terms would be 54i. 6 and 9 is 54, and you got the I there. Again, I put them on top of each other because they're like terms. And then 6 times negative 2 is negative 12i squared. But this is going to be a negative 1 right here. Okay, so negative 12 times negative 1 comes out to be positive 12 right there. Positive 12. You bring down your 36, combine the like terms, and get 46 positive. Combine the 36 and the 12, and you get your 48 down here. Everything else stays. 18. Finding the zeros of a function. There's a couple ways that we could do it. So I did was showed you both ways, but after 18, 19, 20, and 21 are easier. Number 18 I factored. Okay, so I'm going to write that up here. I'm going to put factored because I look for a GCF. Probably not the easiest way in these, but it works. Just wanted to show you. So I took out a 5. I divided both of these by 5. And that's the 5 that I took out right there. Okay, so that 5 comes out. If you divide them both by 5, you're just going to have an x squared left and a 3 left. And then you're going to set that equal to 0 because we want to find the zeros. And then you're going to solve for x. So I subtracted 3 on both sides, square rooted both sides right here. But again, you got a square root of a negative here, so you're going to end up with an I in your answer. And square rooting both sides means you need the plus and the minus. You need a plus or a minus answer. So a positive squared is a positive, and a negative squared is also a positive. Number 19, I did it the easier way. So I just made it equal to 0 for the zeros. And then I just subtracted 21 on both sides. Okay, so just minus 21 right here on both sides. Then I divided by 3 on both sides to get x squared by itself. And then you square root both sides. And negative 7 is going to be plus or minus radical 7i. Now radical 7 is not a perfect square, so you got to leave it in the radical. It's not a perfect square, but the negative 1 can come out as an I. Number 20, you're just going to subtract the 36 on both sides. Now 36 does come out of the square root as a 6. 6 times 6 is 36. The negative comes out as an I. So plus or minus 6i. Square rooting both sides means you need the plus or minus. And 21, you're subtracting 6 on both sides, getting negative 20. And then square rooting both sides. Now 20 you could break down into 4 times 5, and then you've got the negative for the negative 1. So the square root of 4 was a 2. Square root of negative 1 was the I. And then the radical 5 has to stay in. And then you've got your plus or minus in the front. So that's how you solve those. So your job is to do the same on practice B and to do the puzzle. And take a picture of your work and post that to the Google Classroom assignment. Thanks, guys.